Chapter 7. Came out of nowhere. Bruno didn't know how to react other than to cower in his seat. At first he didn't comprehend what it was. Was it his chair that had broken? But when he looked around and realized the entire theater room was shaking as well, then he understood. The only problem was he hadn't the faintest idea what he should do. Was he safe where he sat? Or was he in the line of peril? Only when Jack tugged forcibly on his arm, screaming, "We've got to get the hell out of here fast before the whole place caves in on us," did he spring to action. He followed his friend to the other side of the aisle where the lit emergency sign worked as a beacon. He faltered twice, falling to his knees, surely scraping them before they made it safely outside. He stopped and leaned over, catching his breath when he realized the earthquake had subsided. Though Jack didn't seem to register that because he continued running for his life. "Wait for me, Jack. I have to catch my breath," he attempted to holler, but it didn't come out quite as loud as he'd wished. Jack continued to run, oblivious to Bruno's words. Bruno groaned, "Why can't he just slow down, for Christ's sake?" He took off after him while he continued to catch his breath. His phone vibrated for quite a while before he sensed it. He stopped and leaned against the brick wall nearby to answer it. His legs were on fire as well as his lungs. It was his father. Alarm bells rung in his head. "Dad, are you okay?" "Yeah. I'm okay, though the house isn't. We had an earthquake." "How are you?" "I'm okay. I was in the movie theater when it hit here. I ran out before it got bad. Thank God you're all right." "I want..." The line went dead suddenly. "Dad. Dad?" he shouted into the phone, though he got no reply. He tried to call him back quickly, but there was no signal. Damn it. He cursed, deciding he'd forget about Jack because Jack had obviously forgotten about him. He'd just head home. The next time he'd see Jack, he'd let him have it for abandoning him like he did. Some friend he turned out to be. But if he were being completely honest with himself, he'd have to say that if the tables were turned, he'd have done the same thing to Jack. He continued to walk, observing the desolation and destruction on the streets. The earthquake had been savage and unforgiving. It pounded all the man-made structures and foundations with a vengeance. It was nature's wrath. It was punishing humans for their disrespect, reminding them she and she alone held the reins of control on this world. No one and nothing else. It was going to take months, maybe years, and a whole lot of money to repair all the damage in the town. Bruno wondered in what state he'd find his house. Was it as bad as it was here? He checked his phone again to see if the signal had returned. But he had no luck. Sighing, he trudged ahead. He hadn't made it farther than a few feet when the streetlights suddenly went out. There obviously was no power. He moaned, "Can this damn night get any worse?" A growl from behind him had him jumping. "What is that?" he asked, fearing a feral or injured dog was following him. Another growl ensued until it transformed into a howl. A shiver of fright surged through him and he shuddered. He started to run but couldn't see where he headed. Something up ahead obstructed his path. He toppled to the ground over it, knocking his head on the sidewalk. Dazed and in pain, he beamed his phone around him to see what he'd tripped over. He gasped and clawed to get away from the horror. Jack lay on the ground, his face bloody, his arm mangled and distended. "Jack," he cried. "You okay?" It was a stupid question. Obviously, his friend was dead because of some sort of freakish accident. Acrid bile rushed into his mouth. He had barely enough time to lean over before it came spewing out. It scorched his esophagus and tongue. It felt like his entire digestive system was being siphoned and emptied via his mouth. He couldn't catch his breath. When it finally ended, he thought he'd pass out. But his senses quickly focused when the sounds of grunts and growls returned. He shone his phone's light around him, trying to see what monstrosity was stalking him. "Who's there? Get away. Get away," he shouted, hoping to scare the wild animal away. Wasn't that what someone was supposed to do when a wild animal was on the verge of attack? Whatever it was apparently had been responsible for killing Jack. Bruno was next. Well, he wouldn't stay around long enough to be its easy prey. He darted off blindly, hoping the path ahead was clear of debris. His cell phone's light offered him only about 3 feet of illumination. All of a sudden, he rammed into something that came out of nowhere. He staggered backwards, trying to regain his equilibrium when he saw 2 glazed eyes staring at him thanks to his phone's swaying light. "Hey, watch where you're going," Bruno hollered. The man continued to get closer. He seemed to be dragging his feet as if they weighed triple his weight. "Stop it, man. Get away or else," Bruno warned. He was utterly scared but tried not to show it. His words had no effect on the psycho stranger. Without warning, he charged at Bruno. He opened his mouth, growling. Thick black blood dripped from his teeth. He pounced on Bruno, sinking his stained teeth into Bruno's nose, biting it off. Bruno screamed in fear and agony, trying to push him away. But his futile attempt only brought more predators into the fray. Another man who was missing part of his face and a leg came at him. And then Jack as well. He had somehow become reanimated. Bruno fell to his knees screaming and crying, thrashing uselessly, trying to push them all away, knowing full well the end was near. Death was at his door and had let itself in.
Chapter 8. Aven struggled to open his eyes. He heard the cries, then his friends calling his name in desperation. He tried to answer them, but his body refused to cooperate. It was like he'd fallen into a void from which he was unable to escape. Only when someone slapped him across his face did it jar him awake. His eyes fluttered open, then they closed again. A bright light shone directly in them. Another slap stung his cheek. "Wake up, Aven," Luke pleaded. "Will you stop slapping me?" he moaned, rubbing his head. He motioned to sit up when Veronica took his hand to assist him. "Don't make fast movements, all right? You have a concussion, so take it slow." "Is that why my head hurts so much?" "Yeah. You hit your head when the earthquake started and passed out," she informed him. He blinked several times, trying to adjust his eyes to the darkness. "Why is it so dark?" he asked. "The power went out a few minutes ago," Luke said. He started to stand but fell back to his knees. "What's wrong?" Nat asked, her voice laced with tension and concern. "I'm a bit dizzy," he claimed. "We should take him to the hospital," Veronica suggested. "But the 911 dispatcher said they were coming," Luke argued. "We called them more than half an hour ago. They should have been here by now," Nat rationalized. "I don't need paramedics. I'm fine," Aven mumbled. He felt like a truck had rammed into him. His head throbbed, but he was able to stand and walk, albeit he was a little wobbly on his feet. "But you need to get checked out," Veronica reasoned. "No, I'm fine," he lied. He was far from fine, but he'd be okay after a good night's sleep. "Are you strong enough to walk to the car?" Luke asked. "Yeah," he answered, praying that he could. He looked all around. Emergency lights were the only source of lighting in the place. "Where did Jack and Bruno go?" "They ran out of here right when the earthquake started," Luke stated. "And no one came in here to check on us?" Aven asked. "Nope. No one," Luke said. He jutted his chin toward the exit door. "We'd better get going. I'm sure my mom is worrying like crazy about me since she can't get a hold of me." "Why can't she get a hold of you?" Aven inquired. "We lost cell signal right around the time the power went out," Luke told him. Aven retrieved his phone from his pants pocket. The glass screen protector was cracked on the right side of the screen, most probably caused by his fall, but it was still in working condition. Except he couldn't text or call. He had no service as well. "My parents must be freaking the hell out," he said. "They are probably on their way home when they found out about the quake, and they couldn't get a hold of me." "All our parents are," Nat added. "So let's go." Luke started to make his way to the emergency door. The gang followed him, Aven walking slower than usual because every step he took made his head hammer. He hadn't expected it to be practically pitch dark outside. Only when Luke and Nat beamed the light from their cell phones around them did Aven witness the monumental damage the earthquake had caused. The street ahead had a long and deep crack running right through it. A car was overturned, and part of the building facing the movie theater had collapsed. The earthquake must surely have caused casualties. His stomach dropped as he began to fear the worst and prayed to God that his family was okay.